often in the wake of a cliff, you can be really lost, confused, disoriented, uncertain, reeling, right? You can really feel lost for certain times. And in the wake of a cliff, you can feel the fog often rolled in very, very thick. But there are other types of fog of youth we've talked about, but there can be like the fog of disappointment, the fog of grief, the fog of retirement, the fog of success, right? There's these different permutations of fog. And what I came to, first of all, just a great sense of compassion for people going through the fog,
Mm-hmm.
because I think sometimes you'd almost want to judge people. Why are you so confused? But actually, you're supposed to be in the fog at some points. It's an artifact of living. It's not a defect.
Mm-hmm.
It simply is going to happen. But then the question is, how did they get out of the fog?
Welcome to the Evolving with Gratitude podcast. I'm your host, Lainie Rowell. I'm an author and speaker, and I'm here to help you optimize happiness, relationships, and performance. Hello, friend. What do I do when life gets foggy? More on that soon, but for now, welcome to part 2 of our conversation with Jim Collins, author of multiple international bestsellers, including Good to Great, with more than 11 million copies sold worldwide. Jim has described himself as reclusive by temperament and naturally selective with his time, which makes this conversation such an extraordinary honor. If you haven't listened to part 1, I recommend starting there. We talk about his new book, What to Make of a Life, the decade of research behind it, encodings, getting in frame, and the cost of doing what you love. But you're also welcome to jump in right here. Let's get to it. I'm curious if it would be a good time to talk about the Bug Book,
Oh, yes, the bug book.
because I do feel like this is a very practical
Yeah,
way
yes.
that you have
Yeah,
figured out
yeah,
is the stress and dread. I mean, do you make that? Am I making that connection out of
yeah.
nowhere, or
Oh,
is that a
yeah,
good connection?
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's two parts. Let's break this into two parts with the bug book.
Yeah.
One is how I use the bug book to get out of the fog of youth.
Okay.
And the second is that, well, after we chat about that, how I use an evolved version of the bug book
Yeah.
to kind of manage the stress and drudgery tax and navigate my life today. So first of all, the bug book.
Yeah.
When I was lost in the fog of youth in my 20s and trying to, well, I didn't have the language for it, but what I was doing was I was searching for my encodings and how I could be in frame. Now I could put language on that, but I was just kind of fumbling around through the fog of youth. And I had a wonderful teacher by the name of Rochelle Myers, who co-taught a course uh, on a variety of things, but it's called Creativity in Business at the Stanford Business School. And Rochelle said to me, she said, "Well, you should study yourself like a bug." And what she meant by that, so actually I got this lab notebook. You remember those lab notebooks we used to have with the little
Like the
clock?
composition books, like
Yeah,
black
they're
and
like the
white.
composition books.
Yeah.
And I wrote on the front of it, Jim, and not that Jim owns the book, but the subject under study is Jim the bug.
Yeah.
And the idea was that I wouldn't judge myself. That
Mm.
was the rule number 8. Don't judge yourself. I would simply observe how the bug Jim behaves. So if you were like studying a bug in a petri dish, you wouldn't be like, oh, that's a bad bug because it's got, it should have 8 legs. It's only got 6. I mean, you wouldn't say that. You would just simply record it has 6 legs.
Yeah.
And under these conditions, it does these things, right? You would just observe. So I started carrying this bug book with me, and I was working in a large company, and I was not encoded to work inside a large company. And so there's a lot of bug book entries in there about how frustrated I would be in meetings that went on too long and didn't accomplish anything. I'd be frustrated that people would want to actually have traditional productivity at 3 in the afternoon, and I'd want to take a nap because that's actually how I was encoded. I'm encoded to nap in the afternoon and whatever. And I'm just simply observing these things. And then through the use of the bug book, and they go on I still have the bug books. There was a moment when I was asked to make sense of the early days, this is way back in the 80s, of what was going to become network computing and to share it with the rest of the team. And all of a sudden, I noticed something clicked into frame, which is I had to take something big and complicated and seemingly amorphous, make sense of it, put it in a framework that I could share and teach that all the other people on my team in the division could understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when all of a sudden the frame shifted, and I realized that there were these encodings of wanting to make sense of the world and be able to package that understanding and then to be able to convey it.
Mhm.
And that's what began to lead me to a series of steps that ultimately led to me teaching at Stanford, starting my research career, etc. It was the bug book and the self-observations. And so it's a fog of you thing. Let me pause there because it obviously captured your interest. I use it today to deal with the stress and drudgery tax too, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the bug book.
I just find it so fascinating. I'm gonna tell you, I have almost 2 dozen questions. That was not
Mhm.
one of them, but I
Yeah,
just as you were talking about the
yeah,
stress and drudgery, it just, like, clicked for me, like, "Oh my gosh, that was how," and I don't remember, maybe I'm just remembering
yeah,
from the book if you connected those dots directly or if it just hit for me at that moment. But I do love that you found a way to observe, and
that's right.
you operationalized this protocol, and
Yeah,
now it's evolved, and I really am excited for people to hear how it's evolved to, like,
yeah.
you use this every day, but it's a
Every
different,
single day.
yeah,
Every
little
day.
different.
And so first, for those who are in the fog of youth, we were talking earlier, what I was doing, I wasn't so clear as I could be now about exactly why it was working. But what I was doing was I was mapping that constellation, right? I was looking at which parts of the constellation had big stars and which didn't, and then moving my life in that direction. And the bug book was kind of my way of doing it. So today it's evolved to where every night I have a spreadsheet and I open up. And in that spreadsheet, there are three pieces of information that go in. One is kind of a diary entry of everything that was in the day, right? So I
Mhm.
have a record of what was in the day. The second thing that goes in there is the number of creative hours I got that day because I track that to make sure I stay above 1,000 creative hours every 365 days. So that's just a tracking of an important metric for me of my own kind of 20-mile march. But the third thing I put in every day is I put in a totally subjective score: +2, +1, 0, -1, -2.
Mm.
And the idea being that +2 days, those are just wonderful days. Those are the super positive days. I don't have to justify it as I know what a +2 is, right?
Yeah.
The -2s are the really negative days. And then by doing this systematically every day, I can begin to see what are the elements of days that have a lot of -1 or -2, or that have a lot of +1 or +2. And then I can begin to make a series of iterative choices. While I'm still going to have -1, -2 days,
Yeah.
uh, I can begin to make choices to do more of the things that have the +2s in them
Mhm.
and less of the things that have the -2s, even though I'll always have some there.
Yeah.
And I track the total percentage of positive days to negative days. And if the negative days start growing as a percentage in some significant way, then I start wrestling with the question of what needs to change to kind of bring those back down.
So as you notice these trends, hopefully for the good, but if
Yep.
it's not, would you say that's your simplex stepping? Is that
Yes.
when you start to do some simplex stepping? Because if you could tell people what that is.
Yeah. So I found that, again, so there's so many things, Lainey, in this in doing the research over the years that for me were a great sense of relief when I came across them in the research. There were some things that ended up quite challenging me as well, and there were lots of things that which I just didn't see coming. Right, they were real surprises, often wonderful surprises. But one of the surprises that ties to simplex stepping is that we use this word fog, and I was surprised to discover the extent to which there are episodes across these lives that were what I simply call fog.
Yeah.
Often in the wake of a cliff, you can be really lost, confused, disoriented,
Yeah.
uncertain, reeling, right? You can really feel lost for certain times.
Mhm.
And in the wake of a cliff, you can feel the fog often rolled in very, very thick. But there are other times of fog of youth we've talked about, but there can be like the fog of disappointment, the fog of grief, the fog of retirement, the fog of success, right? There's these different permutations of fog. And what I came to, first of all, just a great sense of compassion for people going through the fog,
Mhm.
because I think sometimes you'd almost want to judge people. Can't, well, why are you so confused? But actually, you're supposed to be in the fog at some point. It's an artifact of living. It's not a defect.
Mhm.
It simply is going to happen. But then the question is, how did they get out of the fog?
Mhm.
And that was the simplex stepping piece where, so suppose you're lost in the fog and you're just kind of wandering, or you don't know what to do. Maybe you're reeling from a cliff. Maybe you're in the fog of youth. Maybe you have retired and but you still got all this energy and don't know what to do with it. But there's all these different permutations, but you're in the fog.
Yeah.
And one approach would be, I'm just going to sit and contemplate, but that didn't seem to be what they did. Or I'm just going to make a bold plan to get out of the fog, but that can just throw you over another cliff, because if you can't see and you go leaping off into space, hoping you're going to land, you might just be jumping off another cliff. Why? Because you're in the fog and you can't see.
Mm.
And so what they did instead was, imagine you can only see 2 or 3 feet in front of you.
Mm.
And all you do is you look around and say, I don't really know where I'm going. That was one of the interesting things. They often didn't know. It's not that they knew where they were going and it was just a bit foggy. When they were really in the fog, they didn't know where they were going. They really didn't know. And so then, okay, so I don't know where I'm going. All I'm going to do is look around at the possible steps that are right in front of me. I'm just going to take a single step,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to reset. I'm going to look around again. Oh, okay, now that I'm here, this looks like the best next step. And then I'm going to look around again, and well, this looks like the next best step. And that iterative sort of step by step movement, as they move through that, the fog would begin to clear. They'd be getting clues as to what might be on the other side of the fog. And that pattern of a small iterative series of steps through the fog was really the way that they initially started to get through, and they stayed with it until the fog began to lift. And then they might make some really big moves once they were clear. But you could be in that simplex stepping for years.
And that was another thing that kind of gave me relief, reduced stress,
Hmm.
is like, okay, this could be something that is going to take a while. And I think
Hmm.
as a not patient person, as
Hmm.
someone who I love to be in control,
Yeah.
to release yourself of
And to
that. And
have
it's just an
clarity.
easy thing to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what's so striking to me is there were times in their lives when they were in a phase of great clarity, and they were, I mean, once they were clear, they were moving. So
Yeah.
when Catherine Graham finally stepped out of the fog, it took her a number of years. That she's a primary case in the simplex stepping chapter. Once she was clear, I really am going to be CEO of this company,
Mhm.
fully own that, and I'm responsible. And this is really, I'm a really well constructed for this. Then she was just on her way, right? Just bam. But up until that point, there's a series of small steps. And that took about 7 years, as I, at least based on the way it looked to me on the research. She didn't have it figured out after a single year.
Mhm.
And so to be able to give yourself a little bit of realizing, like, I don't have to have the answer right away. There are times when I'm going to be really clear and I'm going to be moving in a really bold and direct way. And
Mm.
there are going to be times when I'm really unclear and I'm going to be simplex stepping through the fog.
I don't know why it popped to mind, but I know at some point you said the word retirement. And
Mm,
I know you've said you have more energy now than you did in your 30s.
I
And
do.
I,
Yep. And
and it,
I'm
and
68 and I have more energy than when I was 38. I can't totally explain it, but it's true.
but we feel it. We feel it. And I wonder if over maybe this research or even before that, if you're just over your life, your ideas about retirement have
Mm.
evolved, because there are some cultures where retirement's not actually a thing.
Hmm.
We happen to live in this culture where it's like, well, you're going to hit a certain age and then you're going to be playing golf all day, or you're going to be knitting, or you're going to be doing
Hmm.
some of these things. But I don't
Mm.
really feel like that's the best, healthiest move necessarily. I know that there
Hmm.
are going to be things like you've talked about with the NFL players. There
Yeah.
will come times where you're not going to get a choice and you will be
Hmm.
told, for this chapter of your life, for this thing that you're doing, you're going to retire from it. But
Hmm.
it doesn't mean retiring. So I don't know. I
Mm.
didn't even have this on there, but you mentioned
Yeah.
the word retirement at some point, and it made me think, like, has your thinking there evolved?
So, uh, my own thinking has evolved. I'll put it this way. I think the book will evolve a lot of other people's thinking about it. For
Yeah.
me, I've always been somebody who, I think once I really came into frame, I realized I would be, I'm just going to go until I can't go anymore. I'm too curious, right? And I'm
Yeah.
too interested in what I'm doing. And I'm willing to pay the stress and drudgery tax to continue to do what I love to do. I don't ever have to work again. My life has been very fortunate.
Yeah.
Started out in a very difficult place, and then I had a lot of really good things go my way, some bad things too. But
Yeah.
basically, I keep going because I never want to stop, right? But then I thought, well, maybe I'm just a really unusual bug with that. But then through the lens of this study, I began to see it really differently across a wider swath of people.
Mhm.
And what I really came to see is, first of all, to accept that retirement is a cliff. So
Mhm.
once you understand that retirement's a cliff, it is the end of life as you knew it before.
Mhm.
So by that definition, it's a cliff.
Yeah.
And it can be a really murky, difficult cliff. And one of the things we know from the research is that some of our best, most creative things that we can do in our entire lives happen well past the midpoint, happen for the people in our study. Some of their most remarkable things in life and creative things, impactful things, breakthrough things were in their 50s or 60s or 70s, sometimes even 80s or 90s.
Mhm.
And so if all of a sudden you retire at, say, 60, but actually your best, most creative stuff is yet to come,
Yeah.
well, you got a real problem. How do you think about that? What happens if you retire just as you're finally starting to get really good at what you do? And so what when you accept that retirement is a cliff, you change the question, not from what do I do in retirement,
Mhm.
but to a different question, which is how do I come into frame again
Mm.
with maybe a new definition of what it means to be in frame? And what new responsibilities do I want to choose with my life that will feed my fire and that will have me in frame? They just may be a different answer to the question, just as the NFL players faced it earlier. It's still the same question. What's the next version of being in frame?
Yeah.
And you may answer it in a different way than you did pre-retirement. The debilitating definition of retirement is the one where you never get back in frame again. You
Mm.
just retire.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's really helpful. I love that. So I'd like to get to, I want to make sure there's some that I just can't not ask you.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the difference between luck and return on luck? I don't
Mm.
have a great segue for this,
Yeah.
but I do think it's something that I just find it very interesting, the idea
Hmm.
of what do we do when the good things come our way.
Yeah.
So,
Or the bad things.
well, or the bad
Right.
things. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Exactly. So my colleague Morton Hansen and I, back on an earlier piece of work called Great by Choice, Morton was a great collaborator, and we were able to study the variable of luck. And we
Mhm.
were doing it in the context of companies at that time. We were studying entrepreneurs that built some of the great successful startups of the second half of the 20th century in very, very turbulent environments, in contrast to others that started in the same place and didn't build as successful companies. And one of the questions we said was, well, how much of this is just luck?
Yeah.
And so Morton, being a tremendous methodologist, said, well, if we can define luck as an event, then we could actually study the luck events and ask the question, which is, were those big winners luckier than the others?
Mm.
Because we could count them. And so a luck event, a luck as opposed to return on luck, a luck event is any event that meets three tests. One, you didn't cause it. Two, it has a potentially significant consequence,
Yeah.
good or bad.
Yeah.
And three, in some form, it came as a surprise.
Mm.
Either that had happened, or when it happened, or what form it took, right? And it can be bad luck, it can be good luck, but that's a luck event.
Yeah.
And so then what we discovered in that research is that the big winners were actually not luckier. They didn't have more good luck, less bad luck, better timing of luck, bigger spikes of luck. What happened was when they got their luck events, they made more of the same luck events.
Mhm.
And so, and it was the return on the luck that made the difference. So When the luck event came, they recognized it and said, this is not all time in life is equal. This is a time to grab that luck event and make more of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that return in the distortion time, the not all time in life is equal time, when you grab that luck event and make the most of it. You kind of respond to with 10x intensity
Yeah.
in the wake of the luck event. That's what produces the return on luck.
You mentioned not all time in life is equal, the
Mm-hmm.
Natalie.
Yep.
And could you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
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 So,
There's I've got some wonderful examples of that in the book, but maybe one of the best ways from people in this study, because there's lots of them, right? That they come, like you just realize. But I'll use a personal version of this because it was so profound for me. There's three different types of luck, right? There's what luck.
mhm,
If I get a cancer diagnosis, that's bad luck, but it's a what luck. Good luck can be, something just positive happens that you didn't cause and it helps your life. There's who luck, which are the luck of coming across a wonderful person who really plays a role in your life.
mhm,
Mentor, teacher, maybe you got great who luck with your parents, whatever. And then the third is zeit luck, that just something you're doing just happens to intersect with the zeitgeist of the time. So those are the three kinds of luck. Now, in my own case, I had what luck and who luck that led to this Natalie moment when I was coming out of the fog of youth. The who luck was a great mentor by the name of Bill Lazier, who was the closest thing to a father I ever had.
mm,
And I was lucky enough to come across Bill because I wanted to be in another version of a course that was offered at Stanford when I was in the business school. And that course filled. And so there was this new professor named Bill Lazier, and I just got randomly assigned to his course,
mhm,
total random. And he ended up taking an interest in me and was a real father figure in my life. Then, when I, through a series of steps, there was this other luck event, bad luck for someone else, good luck for me, when the person who taught the course that Bill taught, alongside, another section of it, had a family tragedy just before the school year started.
mm,
And they didn't have anybody to teach entrepreneurship and small business for those sections.
yeah.
And Bill, my who luck,
Mm,
went to the deans at Stanford Business School and said, why don't we give Jim a chance? And that invited me in to begin teaching at Stanford. So there was a luck event of a who luck and a what luck
yeah.
that opened this moment. But then came the question of the return on luck. So this was just sort of this luck event. I was 30 years old. And that's when Bill basically said to me, okay, it's sort of like the image I have in my mind of his little lecture to me was, you're going to get a chance to pitch a game in Yankee Stadium. All the other pitchers, for whatever reason, aren't arriving at the game. You get a chance to pitch in Yankee Stadium one game.
Yeah.
But if in that one game you threw a no-hitter, you're going to get to play again.
Yeah.
And that was when Bill said to me that this is one of those times when nothing is the same. You've got one shot, one opportunity,
Mm.
right? And this is the time to do everything you can to make the most of it. And so that was the Natalie moment. And that Natalie moment changed my life.
It just reminds me there have been so many Natalie moments, and I actually feel like who luck has been something that has been so
Mm-hmm.
critical to my entire life. I have
Yep.
been really blessed to have leaders
Mm.
who saw my encodings
Yep.
when I did not. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I could list them all from Steve
Yep.
Meyer to Ellen November to I'm currently working
Mm.
for Dr. Stephen Bean
Yep.
and they're people who see things and there's so many I'm leaving out, so I'm so sorry. But these are people who saw things in me. And so
Mm.
this kind of is going to be my moment to bring
Mm.
us to the connection of good to great
Mm-hmm.
because if you were to add a
Mm.
chapter to
Mm-hmm.
good to great based on
Mm.
this beautiful book, What to Make of a Life,
Mm-hmm.
what would that chapter be about as far
Mm.
as leading people with encodings or
Mm.
maybe it wouldn't be about encodings, but how would you
Mm.
see adding this research to that?
Well, so first of all, that's a really marvelous question. That's a marvelous, marvelous question. the thing that really comes to mind for me about that is ways I would enhance my understanding of a couple of the really key ideas from Good to Great. One being level 5 leadership, and the other being about first who, the right people on the bus, and so forth. And I would tie them into the idea of encodings. Because what I found, so first of all, on the question of first who, the term that everybody grabbed onto, which was it was a nice way to phrase things in the book, and it became a way a lot of people talk, which is the right people on the bus, right?
Mhm.
And that's still right. You need the right people on the bus. But what this study taught me is it's really about the seats,
Mm,
ultimately. The right people in seats that put them in frame with their encodings.
yeah.
And so if you think about this idea that you're leading a team, you've got right people on the bus, but then you look around at the people on your team and you ask, and you have somebody who's they're sort of they're like 100-watt light bulb. They're doing okay in that seat, but it's not really they're really not like they're not like a giant lightning bolt. They're a light bulb in that seat. But if you were able to kind of shift the frame of their responsibilities or the seat that they were in, such that what you're doing is you're moving the frame of their life so that when they come into frame, you move them into a different seat where the window frame shifts and bang, a bunch of their encodings come through the window and now they're in frame. They go from being a light bulb to being a lightning bolt.
Mm,
And that part, when you were talking about the people in your life, who they help you see your encodings, they saw things in you that you didn't necessarily see as clearly yourself.
mhm,
And I think what I would add into Good to Great is that part of the whole question of first who is how do you get to know your people so well that you can begin to sense their encodings?
mhm,
And then you, as who luck in their life, move them closer and closer to seats that really fit their responsibilities. There's a wonderful story in the book about a member of my own team who I had out of frame. And then instead of firing him, which he thought I was going to do and what I thought I was going to do, instead, I moved him to a seat where he was in frame.
mhm,
And he had a spectacular run of incredible success and contribution on my team. I feel so good about that because it wasn't resulting in firing somebody. The result was a marvelous young man in frame who had a spectacular result. So I would write that. The other is there's no recipe book for leadership to do these 10 things because that's how somebody else leads.
mhm,
There's a whole section in the chapter 12 of the book about if leadership is the art of getting people to want to do what must be done. And level 5 is doing that with humility and will in service to a cause bigger than yourself. The artistry of it reflects your encodings. And that what I really would say to people is don't try to lead the way other people lead. Lead in a way that reflects your encodings. And your leadership encodings will be different than other people's leadership encodings. And that if you trust your leadership encodings, the way you get people to want to do what must be done, you will be a more effective level 5 leader than if you shouldn't try to be like Grace Hopper or Catherine Graham
mhm,
or Benjamin Franklin or any of the other really great leaders we write about that in the leadership roles in this book or Alice Paul. They were encoded different than you are.
mm,
And they were successful not because they followed a preset recipe book of this is how a leader leads. They were effective as leaders because they expressed their leadership encodings into their artistry of leadership.
mm. Okay, I'm looking at the clock and I'm very sad that our time is almost up, but I'm gonna ask you just sadly only like a couple more questions.
Sure. You've had marvel, but I just want to compliment you, Lainey. I love your questions. Like that's a I knew you'd be prepared. I knew you'd be curious. And that was just a really fabulous question to sort of bring those two pieces of work together through that question.
Well, thank you. I really I'm not just saying this like both your books are so special to me and really the way that they came to me at certain points in my life. First of all, both books should be read at every point of every life, but really just the way that they did happen to come into me. I wanted to make that connection because
Mm,
really Good to Great has been a welcome guest in my brain for
Mm.
so long, and to be
Mm.
able to have this again, this is a trophy for me. And I will tell you, it was very hard to make the first marking in this book because this is so precious to me. But I had to convince myself to let go of it because this is how I need to fully engage with this book. And so they both have been well loved, well marked up, and I thank you for them so much. So I'm
Well,
gonna
well-read books are what most matter to me. I've always bestsellership's great, but more important is best readership.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so I have to ask you this signature question that I always ask, and that is, what is something that you cannot share enough?
Mm.
It means so much to you. Maybe it's something you already shared in our conversation, but you want to reiterate it. Maybe it's something we haven't had a chance to talk about, but this is the thing you would want to shout from the rooftops
Mm-hmm.
because it's so
Yeah.
important.
And so I'm going to ask you the same question. So do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I- I'll go first because then we give you
Okay.
more time. But I
Okay.
would just say I keep coming back to you saying there's no recipe.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one way to do this. And it's not like your encodings are only meant for one thing
Yep.
and you better figure it out or it's a total loss.
Mm-hmm.
So I really felt like the permission to, there's more than one way
Mm-hmm.
to live in fulfillment of your encodings. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're all unique and dynamic. There's no
Mm-hmm.
recipe. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of my big thing from our conversation today. There's so
Mm.
many though.
Yeah, I think that's a great one because also the idea that as I write in the first chapter, it's not a self-help book, it's a self-knowledge book,
Yeah.
right? And it's ultimately reflects the self-knowledge as you bring it to life in the world. I think that's a wonderful one to pick. And then one I would pick, there's the thing about doing a 12-year project, there's lots I could choose, but the one I would highlight, the one that probably gets me the most animated is I would want to shout from the rooftops that you do not need to accept the idea that your younger self will tower over your older self.
Mm.
And that the one of the things that, I mean, it's just, that simple little statistic in the book from like Benjamin Franklin, when you ask what percentage of the biographies and major biographies are still left, how many pages are left when he hits age 60, and it's 53% of the books on average. And this idea that when you hit age 60, you're not even halfway in terms of what's going to potentially be most interesting and creative and impactful in your life. And when I look at all the people in our study and the things that they did, I think of it as when you hit 60, you finish your warm up, right? Just finish your warm up. And so much of what they did that was utterly spectacular in their lives came late. And this idea that somehow the creative stuff is what we do when we're young, boy, these lives show that a lot of the creative stuff came well past the midpoint.
I love that, and I'm so happy to still be warming up because
Yep.
I'm looking forward to what comes next. I know I have to let you go. I want to make sure people know that What to Make of a Life is available now, and they should
Mhm.
grab a copy, and you should hug it like I do, and really engage with it and mark that thing up because there's so much good stuff in there. People can find you at jimcollins.com. Jim, is there anything else you want to point people towards?
The website's a really great place to get acquainted with all of our work. Actually, not just what to make of life, which of course is there, but also Back to Good to Great and Built to Last and the whole body of work at 68. There's been quite a number of decades of doing that. And I would just also love to say, I think that you should get from me your own final first edition printed hard cover of the book, which I will sign to you and send to you. And that can be the one you can mark up all the others, and that one you can keep on your shelf.
Now I'm gonna have two book trophies for
Yeah.
What to Make of a Life. I love that. That would be so lovely. Thank you so
Happy
much.
to do it.
Jim, this has been a highlight of my life for me.
Mm.
I hope I've somehow contributed to a +2 day for you
Yes.
in your bug book and your
Yes.
spreadsheet for today. And I just again want to thank you for your time and thank everyone for listening.
You're very welcome. I can completely say that this will be a positive day. It'll be +1 or +2. And either way, a big part of the contribution to the plus of this day, and perhaps a +2, is our conversation today. And what I so enjoy about it is that we had a conversation.
If you're grateful for this episode, please be sure to subscribe today. And if you're feeling really thankful, please submit a review and share with others so they know the value. One last thing, please connect on social media using the hashtag evolvingwithgratitude to share your gratitude stories.